Welcome to a special edition of the Total Wellness Empowerment Podcast. I'm Nancy Guberti, and I'm here with a special guest. And on the Total Wellness Empowerment Podcast, we talk about your physical health and your mental health, because that's how you reach total wellness of mind and body. And I'm so excited to have Stacey with me today. I met Stacey in the year 2013. I remember it well because I had taken my kids on an Easter break to Bermuda. And I was like, I have to talk to this woman, Stacey Morris. And I was so excited. And that started the journey of meeting one of the most genuine, beautiful women I know, both internally and externally. That's how I know Stacey. But Stacey is an amazing journalist. So if you want an article written or something covered, contact her. She also does healthy recipe development. She could write cookbooks for you as well. And she's a survivor of the diet culture. If we look back at that, it's still going on today, and the detrimental fallout of that. She writes on topics of healing from bad childhood. Listen, there's a lot going on in childhood, and I think it's great to bring that to the forefront because we have a lot of people dealing with that and survivors from that. And sometimes they're ashamed to express what they went through. So I would highly recommend connecting with Stacey on that, as well as she talks about self-esteem and reconciliation and forgiveness and maybe not forgiveness and the journey of all of that. If you look on Amazon, you can see all of her cookbooks called Clean Comfort, Sweet Comfort, and A Bowl of Comfort. All of them feature gluten-free, dairy-free, cow-free, casein-free recipes, and they are available on Amazon. She's active on Facebook and Instagram, and she has a Substack page that I would highly recommend checking out. So if you go to substack.com and then look up at the Recovering American, and her website is staceymorris.com, and that's STACEY Morris, MORRIS.com. Welcome you to our special Total Wellness Empowerment Podcast. And
Thank you.
again, I'm so happy for you to be here.
I'm happy to be here, Nancy, and thank you for having me. It's been quite a journey since 2013. You've just been, not only have you taught me a lot with your nutritional practice and your functional medicine philosophy, but you've been a real source of support, which I find to be all too rare, really, in the realm of wellness. And I think this stems from, it's well intended often, but there's so much insidious damage from diet culture, and which places so much emphasis on appearance and on perfection and what you should do in weight loss. And sometimes focusing on the weight loss, I've discovered, and I know for sure, puts the cart before the horse. There's so much healing. There was so much healing for me to do physically, emotionally, spiritually. And the weight loss has often just been a result of getting a lot of that in order. I know for sure it can't be forced. And whenever I do try to force it, it boomerangs back. At the ripe age of almost 62, I finally just settled in and accepted that even though right now my weight's not where I want it to be. I've been through a lot of health challenges and emotional challenges the past few years, but I'm moving in a direction of health and better health. And it starts with self-compassion and honesty and self-inquiry and really agreeing to be kind to myself at every level. That's where it starts. And that's not a quick process, but it's the best one I've found. Everyone's individual, but I think this is a great foundation, no matter which way of eating or exercise or supplementation fits for you. I think all healing starts with self-compassion. And you're a great example of that. I've learned a lot of that from you.
Well, thank you. And you're so correct. I always would say your health is worth it because you are worth it. Because what I have seen from doing this for over 27 years now is that people don't feel they're worthy of being healthy, or they're worthy of getting to whatever weight management, or if they get there, to keep it going. So that starts right there at the beginning, our self-worth to ourselves. And that gives us the confidence, and how that also gives us acceptance. We have to accept the skin we're in at every stage of our life. And we have to be kind. We can't say, oh, I'll love myself when I lose that weight, or I'll feel worthy when. No, we're worthy now, right? We're here for a reason. And I truly believe everyone has a purpose if they have good intentions. So we have to really foster and nurture that aspect, that you are worthy. And that's why my big thing, Stacey, would be, what do you say after I am? The two words, I am. What do you say after that? I am. And if it's something negative, don't even say it out loud. Replace it, even if you don't feel that way, until you believe it.
Exactly. And that's on one of your past podcasts. And it's also on your membership site, which I refer to quite a bit. There are a lot of great tips and tactics on how to approach whether it's avoiding inflammatory foods, which there's so many out there, so many fly under the radar that even seem healthy, or whether it's how do you view yourself? Because that's where it all starts. It doesn't matter what the scale says or how, quote, good you've been with food. It starts with how do I approach myself? How do I see myself? We all have layers of conditioning. And if they weren't especially positive, they can be there without us even noticing.
Right.
So that's been a lot of my work lately, is excavating and getting rid of the layers, and knowing that there might always be a little bit of a shadow or a remnant there, but they don't have to run my day, because that's a choice that I can make. It takes dedication and focus.
100%. A friend of mine had said to me, other people could be going through crazy things and they could be spiraling, and they want you to join them. Don't get on their ride. It's the same thing with our own thoughts. Don't get on the ride of the negativity, or I'm not worthy, or this, or I'll never get out of this, or I'll never reach that health goal, any type of goal, financial goal. It doesn't matter. If you hear that, don't get on that. Say stop. That's a habit that takes some practice that you almost have to do on a daily basis.
Yes, it is. I don't like the term practice makes perfect, because there's no such thing as perfect. But I wrote a Substack yesterday on forgiveness. And I said to practice, I've got to keep doing it regularly. At the end, I said something like, practice makes practiced. It makes you good at it. It doesn't make you perfect. There's no such thing. And that's too high. That's not even something we should shoot for, because it's always a setup, whether it's forgiveness or appearance or whatever. There has to be a level of perfection. Well, but whose standards anyway? Who decides that?
Exactly.
What's perfect or okay by society is driven by, a lot of it's driven by fear and loathing and commercialism. And that's a whole other topic, like plastic surgery and procedures and fat melting everywhere, and I don't judge anyone who's done it, but as someone who has sought happiness through improving my appearance, I know that it's not the end goal. When I look good, it's usually because now I'm feeling good. I haven't done all these, like dance steps to make myself look perfect. It's just a result of all these acts of kindness that I implement, and it kind of blossoms in its own way. So that's what I focus on now. All that stuff is just so expensive. Spending money on other things.
I'd rather spend it on healthy food and supplements and traveling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Enjoying life. What a concept.
Getting out in nature and exploring new places. You always look so pretty in pink, and it's a cherry blossom season now. If you look at a cherry blossom in full bloom, you can't help but feel happy. It's like, get out there and experience that. And interesting enough, with like the whole med spa industry, and some people need that, they say, to feel confident. The whole thing about the shots and Ozempic and semaglutide, you end up staying on it, because if you go off of it, you can gain the weight back. But the injection doesn't have discernment of where it takes any fat cells out. So you see a lot of celebrities and even regular people have those Ozempic faces now, because their eyes are sunken, their cheeks are sunken in, and they end up having to put filler into their face to round it out again. Plus, there's a lot of side effects, and And some people say, well, okay, well, maybe I have 20 years left by the time the research shows that it causes cancer. If it does, no research came out like that yet. But if there are side effects like that, I'll probably be on my way anyway. That's kind of scary. There are some natural supplements that can help, and they're called GLP-1 supplements. And I learned about it at a conference that I go to on an annual basis in New York City. And it was nothing but these bitter herbs like lemon extract, but at a high potency. And you take that, and whenever you have something sour, you're not going to be craving anything sweet. I was just talking to a client the other day, and I said, well, you could try, she didn't want to try the supplement. I said, well, what you can do is take lots of lemon or apple cider vinegar or something tart, and don't sweeten it, and drink that in warmed water and see if that reduces your appetite. But there are some supplements, and they'll call them GLP-1 supplements. And basically, they just have the lemon extract and other extracts. So like this is one, it's from this Nature's Wonder. If anybody wants to try a supplement first, and then also, this is a really potent one. So they sent me this, I try that, and I tried this, and I will say, you don't feel hungry. If you do try it, I would first try it with food. Eventually, what they want you to do is try it on an empty stomach. Try lemon. There's an herbal liquid company that sells bitter herbs. So you could even just take that in your mouth or in water. If you want to explore that, either go for bitter foods or lemon, not sweetening it in whatsoever, or try one of these supplements. But it also comes down to your gut health, making sure you don't have a leaky gut, you don't have inflammation, you don't have candida overgrowth. I'm a big fan of journaling. Food journaling. I can't tell you how many people refuse to do that. Refuse. They say it's too much work. And I'm like, too much work, but do we want to know your pattern? Do we want to see what you're eating? This is not judgment. It's more mindfulness. Then you can make little tweaks, and you could do it natural with food. And then if you want supplements before medication, that would be my approach. And some people rather just go to medication. And again, no judgment. If you want to do that, fine, but also support your gut. If you're doing any of those shots, you must support your gut microbiome because it does get negatively affected.
That's something that can get really out of order or out of hand without us knowing it. It's not like an acute pain or something really obvious until basically the bacteria gets to be so great it causes other issues. And I've been working on this with you for years, I think almost since I've known you, and you prescribed certain probiotics and things that I take every morning. And I probably should get tested again. I think that the best way is to get an organic acid test to see how in or out of balance you are. We talked about this in terms of today's podcast because of a New York Times article that was on this condition I'd never heard of called Auto-Brewery Syndrome. It's rare. The reason I bring it up is it brings to light just how deeply our gut affects our health, and when it's out of balance, it can throw other things off. This syndrome has to do with gut so out of balance that when they eat a carb or something, it mimics literally being drunk to the point where you fail a breathalyzer. So I mean, talk about your life getting screwed up. This one gym teacher they interviewed was getting DWIs. His condition was so extreme, he went off carbs and all sugar. Now, that's something I'm probably not willing to do. I do try to stay mindful of especially the simple carbs, because that literally feeding the lion food. I limit sugars because number one, they just set up a cycle of wanting more. I'm recovering from diet culture. With my history, the minute I say, you can't do this or never again, it also sets up fear reaction or a deprivation. And I know now the difference between escapism I can easily do with food and just wanting to have a treat, which there's nothing wrong with that. Completely come to terms with that. If I really listen to myself, I don't want sugar constantly. I really don't, because we're not designed to have sugar constantly. But then because of our culture, we've gotten into this habit, like a regular avalanche of it. I would just love your thoughts on this new syndrome. Really, what can the average person who maybe doesn't have this, because we're all subject to poor gut health, what can we do?
100%. Everything starts in the gut, right? I would always say everybody wants to have their abs so strong, but then they forget about the gut internally. So everything starts in the gut. Interesting about that syndrome, though they say it's rare, they say that it's caused by overuse of antibiotics, which is not rare. So I'm thinking to myself, are they saying it's rare because like we haven't gone to the fact of these DWIs, that hasn't been a commonplace yet, or people haven't made the connection? Because there's so much antibiotic overuse. If you go for anything to urgent care, your doctor, they'll give you antibiotics, and that's a problem. The minute you take antibiotics, they say the research shows that your gut microbiome is destroyed for the rest of your life. Knowing that, you have to take probiotics. There's also something else that happens, and many conventional doctors are recommending probiotics, but what type of probiotics? You don't want them developed on milk. I like Claire Labs. There's something that happens when you get off of antibiotics. Not only is your gut microbiome destroyed, we have to replenish the lactobacillus and the bifidus strands, but candida overgrowth has already begun. And now you can get a rash, you can crave more sugar or simple carbohydrates. So you have to deal with candida overgrowth, which also then goes into aspergillus, which is another fungus. So a few ways you can do that. You can take Saccharomyces boulardii. You can take something called Candidase Pro, which is an enzyme you take on an empty stomach and gently eats away candida. There's also this supplement called CandiKill. This is pretty potent. It gets rid of candida, but it also has berberine, and berberine gets rid of Clostridia spores. So you mentioned the organic acid test. That's a urine test, and it checks your gut health. It checks for microbiome. It checks for aspergillus, candida, arbonos, the active form. It also checks for Clostridia spores, which you can only check with urine, not a stool test. And then it goes into your detoxification. It will show oxalates, because if you have high oxalates, it could be either you're eating foods with oxalates and you could get a kidney stone, or it could be a byproduct of candida. So I would just recommend, if you've been on an antibiotic, take a probiotic 3 hours away from the antibiotic. Make sure you take a little berberine so you can make sure that Clostridia spores don't overgrow. The minute all of this does, you have alcohol, ethanol, you have carbohydrates that are now going to feed sugars. All of that will feed the candida. You'll get that bloated stomach. It'll be hard to lose weight, and you'll get brain fog. You can get dermatitis. It just cascades.
Another thing that you pointed out, this was really opened my eyes, is, in the beginning, I had such a layer of overgrowth in my gut. It was literally physically impeding nutrient absorption. So that's another thing to consider. I mean, I didn't know, and I was taking all kinds of supplements, but getting tested it's a bit of an investment. It's not cheap, but I'd rather do that than, like a med spa. That's where I'd rather spend the money. And it's once a year or every couple of years. But then, you just reminded me, I grew up on antibiotics. I grew up in the 70s, and that's when they were like this with breastfeeding. Oh no, give your kid, a formula from a factory. My siblings and I, we all had constant chronic ear infections, hence the antibiotics. And because we weren't getting what we needed, which was, would have been breast milk and all the antibodies and nutrients. You see how corporate greed can have a domino effect on bad health down the road.
And even now, I mean, that's a great point. I have such issues with baby formula, because if you look at the baby formula, Enfamil and another Isomil, they begin with corn solid syrups, which are genetically modified, not even organic, but corn. There's nothing nutritional about corn. Then they offer soy. And then the kids that are colicky, they have issues with their gut microbiome. So it starts at the very beginning. And if a child is breastfed, it also depends on what the mom's eating. I teach families how to make their own formula if they can't breastfeed, or if the child needs extra nutrients in addition to the breast formula. You have to make it yourself because the FDA won't approve healthy stuff. They just won't. They'll approve all the garbage with all artificial colorings and ingredients and corn solid syrups.
Sad but true. And I also wanted to give another plug for berberine, which you got me on, mainly because my blood sugar was getting high. The last thing I wanted to do was get into that diabetic range. Another reason why I try to watch the sugar. But I started taking a supplement at night, and then I decided, hey, I'll add a little to my coffee. I got the liquid version. I'm happy to report that my sugar's down 10 points.
It works.
Yeah, and it does all the other great things too. So there are things that can be explored that are completely natural. And again, no magic pill or drop or whatever, and it's always in concert with my choices, the choices I make. I can't take berberine and then go eat, a bunch of cookies and think it's going to be negated. It doesn't work that way. It's just striking a balance. This natural remedy has really, really helped me. So I recommend if anyone's listening with blood sugar. And what else does it do? I didn't know it did all these other things.
Yeah, so not only does it help with the blood sugar, it can help with weight management, but it also gets rid of bacteria, the Clostridia spores. It's very potent for that, and it can help the gut microbiome. So you're getting so many benefits. I actually recommend it to individuals over 50 who now are concerned about their A1C, they're concerned about their glucose.
Yeah, so you were saying as some of your clients, including myself, have aged, they're more concerned about certain test results, body function. And this brings me to another topic just recently discovered, and that is some of my kidney function was off, which really shocked me because I don't have any family history. I did some research. I'm putting this together that I've had decades, as I was a former migraine sufferer, of using Tylenol and Motrin, things like that, as almost a daily thing. Also, just our commercial food, the additives. I read up on things like potassium bromate, which is very common. It's in most flours, and that can adversely affect kidney function over time. So I think it was sort of a lifetime of the food system that we are subject to, and seemingly harmless over-the-counter things over time can really have a debilitating effect. I also learned turmeric can adversely affect kidney function if it's too great an amount. And I was doing that in my coffee, like a big heaping teaspoon every day, which was a big change from, nothing to a teaspoon a day. I cut that out, and lo and behold, a lot of my discomfort in the kidney area stopped. You always encourage me and your other clients, be your own detective. Yes, Nancy's an expert. She's well versed in functional medicine and nutrition. Nobody knows your own body like you. So you have to listen to it. What's the feeling? What's the physical sensation? Some food might be great for one person and harsh on another's digestion. So this really, I think this is probably a universal issue with people 40, 50, 60 who have had lifetimes of their kidneys or their livers or whatever processing so many toxins. And then the chickens come home to roost, don't they? There are things I can do to reverse this, to strengthen my kidneys. You gave me some great ideas, parsley tea and, plant-based options. And I bring this up because I think as Americans, we have different things allowed in our food supply that aren't allowed in other countries. Over a lifetime, it can cause cumulative damage. Not to be an alarmist, it's just a reality. And I think, I'm sure you see this with your clients. It's something to be aware of because kidneys are quite crucial. I know we have two, but I don't want to lose even one of them.
100%. And you make a really good point because people will think like turmeric is something healthy. It's good for inflammation, and people will start taking it in abundance. One, it could actually thin your blood out and cause nosebleeds. And we see that a lot with people who take too much of it. The second thing is it's high in oxalates, and oxalates crystallized, and that causes pain. So if you have kidney pain, look at, are you eating a lot of oxalates or foods that are high in oxalates? Could that be causing kidney issues? You mentioned a really good point about Tylenol. This is what gets a little frustrating. The FDA approves those over the counters. People have headaches, back pain, they'll keep popping them. You don't look at that long-term research. We even see research now. Pregnant women were advised they could take Tylenol during pregnancy. And now they're saying there was a link between that and autism. People are like, they don't want to hear that. But let's look at the science for people with kidney issues and pregnant women and their children. Tylenol suppresses glutathione. Glutathione's major role is a detoxifier. The kidneys filter toxins.
Oh.
So you can make a connection of point A to point B to, well, if I'm lowering glutathione levels, that is linked, especially in boys, because they already have low levels, to cognitive issues later on. When we take something, it can have really bad side effects. So I think that's great that you bring that to our attention. You can look at something called white willow, and that's what aspirins are made from. Again, that thins out your blood. There's homeopathic remedies, and I really like this company. They make a really good headache migraine, and you just need 6 drops of that. You mentioned magnesium. So many people are deficient in magnesium. Some people may need CoQ10. So that's where, instead of always going for the over-the-counter, perhaps you want to get tested. You can ask your doctor if they'll check CoQ10 and magnesium. You can experiment with a little of, magnesium. It's needed in 300 processes of the body. And if you are taking turmeric, that is a spice, and herbals, and they are potent. Go for a little, but like you said, be mindful. Everybody's different. You were mindful to make that, oh, wow, I removed the turmeric and the pain has lessened. So we have to be mindful.
Mindful and do a little research, and by all means, listen to your body. I've been on several types of magnesium now for 3 years. What a life changer. I really seldom get migraines, maybe like 1 or 2 a year now versus a couple a month. It was just no way to live. And I'm thrilled I found something that really works for me. As you said, all these other body functions, it benefits the whole body. Extra magnesium. That's something for people to consider, just to get away, if you can, from some of those chemical over-the-counter remedies. And speaking of more over-the-counter stuff, we're right in the middle of spring, which is a mixed bag for people if they have allergies. Some people can really suffer, others are more mildly affected. But as with any issue, there's a lot pushed at us on TV, over-the-counter remedies. But you try to encourage a more natural approach when possible, because there are all alternatives to this.
There are alternatives. I know there's a homeopathic company that, depending on what region you live in the United States, they have remedies for allergies if it's to the environment outside, like oak trees or pollen. So if anybody wants the name of that, they could reach out. I would start off with a basic nasal spray, and I love this company, Xlear, Xlear. This nasal spray comes with me everywhere. I personally use it every day. I've started using it since COVID because the third-party company did research and show that it kills viruses as well. So this is really good to first open your nasal spray up. If it's really bad and you have really bad allergies, I would then follow it up with a silver nasal spray. I know I do Xlear and I do a nano silver every day, and I love it. So it also takes the pressure out of the sinuses. It helps with headache pain. It is so good.
The viruses, that's one of the main ways they enter the body, right? Through the nasal.
Breathe it in.
Yeah.
Somebody sneeze, you breathe it in, right? And I would take that for allergies, sinus pressure, headache, and viruses. It's just all natural. Another thing is to keep your mucous membranes clear. You could take some people call it Mullen, some people call it Muline. You could take this in capsule form, you could take it in liquid form. This really helps the mucous membranes. And if you're really suffering from allergies, then you know that it's a histamine release. I would highly recommend homeopathic remedies. Desbio does have an allergy rescue one. And then Energique has a histamine one. So I like to keep these with me. So when my son runs in the woods and he comes back and he feels like he's got some allergy issue, I always say, take this before you go running, but definitely take it when you come back. And homeopathic is not herbal. The research shows that it does not interfere with medications. Obviously, check with your medical doctor beforehand. And then there's another thing that if you can't breathe, these nasal strips are really good. They're so easy to use. It looks like a Band-Aid, and you just put it over right here on the bridge closer to the nostrils. My favorite male client, Jeff, told me about this. And I was like, oh, well, I'll use my husband as my experiment. And happy to say they work. They're really, really, they really open up your nasal passages and you can breathe. So you'll see some people wear them and you could get them clear or skin color. They'll wear them during the day or they'll wear them to bed, especially if they end up snoring or breathing through their mouth. And they find that it gives them a deeper sleep because they're able to breathe more. So those are some of the ways that you can go through allergy season with some natural remedies, a combination of herbal. If you're on medication, go with the homeopathic only, and then the nasal sprays and maybe even these strips. And they're very inexpensive. This is by Breathe Right.
You also mentioned to me a couple of years ago quercetin as a supplement. I take that anyway. You said just take it all the time because it helps inflammation, right?
Yes, I like quercetin, either quercetin plain or quercetin and bromelain. And bromelain is from pineapples. It's anti-inflammatory as well as you. I take that every day. I have some individuals that just take that during allergy season when they're outdoors doing the garden. It has so many benefits that it's great to have.
Lots of great ideas, Nancy.
There's so many natural remedies. If you haven't explored homeopathic, and Stacey, you might want to speak on this. If you haven't explored homeopathic, I think it's something that you should definitely try. This used to be a very common medicine back in the day in Europe, and it was very, very popular even before actual medication.
Yeah, well, you got me on drops years ago, and I use them off and on, but they are very effective. They're definitely a powerful technique, but also gentle. They don't jar me or anything, but I notice when they have a cleansing effect or a calming effect, it depends on the issue that I'm working on, but it really is an effective non-chemical way to treat different maladies. And you just started me on a 2-week type of a cleanse of the GI tract and the spinal fluid and everything. I know when I'm ready, and I'm like, my body's ready for this. I've been prepping for it, I guess you could say, with better habits and with other forms of supplementation. Now I'm really ready to get to like the underbelly of some of these issues, literally.
Right. Go right cellular. Go right in there. That's huge. We'll have to do a show on homeopathy.
Yeah, I would love to. We've covered a lot. I mean, I don't want to overwhelm listeners. I think just taking a few germs of an idea or a philosophy and trying to make it work for you is plenty of undertaking because good health takes time, focus, energy, and spending some money. There's no way around, whether it's on food, supplements, drops, topicals, but it's like you said in the beginning, you're worth it.
Right.
You know?
It's investment that has a huge ROI, return on investment.
Yeah.
It's when you feel great, you could do anything. And I always say we're here for a reason and a purpose, and you have to feel good to do that. Imagine having a headache or a stomach ache. It just takes you down and you can't do your life's purpose.
Or I know if I'm feeling lethargic or crabby, that kind of is a buffer to my purpose. And I think at the most simple but profound level, our purpose is to, in our own way, make the world a little better, a little brighter. Even if it's just being kind to a stranger, smiling, saying hello. That's what the ultimate is to me. You know, society gives us all these things that we're supposed to be doing. like wealth and fame and physical perfection. No, none of none of that is even discussed at people's funerals, is it? It's like, what did they leave behind in our hearts? And that's really the direct meaning of our purpose, is how can we better affect the world, ourselves, people around, whoever's in your life. That's part of your purpose. I want to be as awake and feel as good as I can to have a positive ripple effect.
That was beautiful. The ripple effect on the lives of others.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate goal. That's amazing. That's how we're ending.
Yeah.
I just feel good so you can do that. And that's why we're here. I'm so honored and blessed that you joined the Total Wellness Empowerment today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, and shared all your knowledge. And I hope we do this regularly.
Let's do it again for sure.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Nancy.
You have a great day, Stacey. You want to tell anybody how about your Substack again and Instagram and Facebook?
Oh, yeah, Substack. If you go to Substack and look for the Recovering American, you should find me. Also, that's my handle on Instagram, the Recovering American. I have a Facebook page. It's called Sacred Self Transformation. Check out all three if you'd like. I'd love to hear from you.
Yes, and get in touch with Stacey because she's a wealth of wisdom and kindness and pureness. So she's very unique and authentic.
Thank you.
Thank you again for
All
being
right.
here.
See you next time.